Life can be full of challenges, but what if I told you that those challenges could be the very path that leads you to success? It is easy to get discouraged when faced with obstacles on your journey towards your goals and visions, but what if I told you that those challenges are the universe's way of guiding you towards your true purpose? In today's episode, I'm going to be diving deep into the topic of challenge and how you can utilize challenges to your advantage to ultimately propel you into the vision that you have for your life. Welcome back to another episode of the Positive Performance Podcast, where I'm sharing the insights and perspectives to help you create a more highly optimized and highly balanced way of living. And in today's episode, I'm diving into the topic of challenge, how the challenges in your life offer you the greatest opportunities for your growth and your development. I'm also going to be sharing how these challenges will offer you the insights that you need moving forward as you grow and evolve into the vision that you have for your life. And now the fact is that the road to success is paved with the bricks of challenge and hardship. And if you talk to any highly successful individual, they will have stories to share with you about the challenge, the hardship, and the setbacks that they experienced on their path to sustained success. And also, when you talk to these individuals, you begin to see a common thread. There's a pattern that begins to emerge. And this pattern exists within their mindset, in their perspectives, in the meaning that they put to these challenges, and ultimately how they approach the challenges that come up in their life. They are able to see these challenges as the necessary growth tools that enable them to become the people they need to become to attain the levels of success that they wanted to achieve in their life. Because you have goals, you have visions, you have dreams, you have all these things that you want to achieve in your life. And to reach those new levels, there's a certain version of you that you're going to evolve into along the way. And it is through these challenges, it is through the resistance that you experience in life that's going to be cultivating deeper resilience, deeper wisdom, deeper insights that's going to propel you forward into that version of you that you need to become. And to really begin to work with this process, it begins with a shift in your internal world, a shift in your mindset, in the meaning that you put to these challenges and the ways in which you reflect upon the things that are happening in your life. And doing so, making this shift, is actually going to be working against the grain of some of the natural processes that's going on inside of your brain. And I've talked about this in earlier episodes about how the brain has this fundamental job of wanting to keep you safe. It wants to keep you in the known. It wants to keep you in this area of predictability. It wants to keep you in your comfort zone. Your comfort zone is the way you've always done things. There's that degree of understanding, of predictability. And this sounds like a great thing, right? Oh, my brain's keeping me safe. It's this kind of built-in defense mechanism, and it sounds awesome. The problem lies in the fact that your limitless potential exists in a different zone called your growth zone. This growth zone is less predictable. This growth zone requires you to step into the unknown. It requires you to take calculated risks. So there's a little bit of resistance that you're going to experience each and every time that you try to move into this growth zone, which is where all of that potential lies for each and every human being. And we have 4 zones that we move through. So I've talked about the comfort zone and the growth zone. So I'll start with the comfort zone, right? Again, this is where you've been living your life. This is where you've done things continually. You kind of know the lay of the land. There's that degree of predictability. And the fact is, if you always do things the way you've always done them, you're going to continue to get the same results. So when we stay in our comfort zone, there isn't that growth. We're not pushing those edges. So we're maintaining and we're gaining those same results that we've always gotten. Now you've made the decision, hey, I want to get out of my comfort zone. So the next zone that you can experience is the fear zone. So now you've stepped out of comfort a little bit. So now some fears come up, right? Maybe we have some fear of judgment. Maybe we have insecurities and self-doubts that come up. Maybe we find excuses coming up in our life. Again, this is that natural self-defense coming up saying, wait a second, you're stepping out of this comfort. We're stepping out of the known. What are you doing? We need to come back into what we know. But as you continue to grow and evolve and move through this fear zone, we reach that next level, which is the learning zone. The learning zone is where you're beginning to expand your capacity. You're learning new things. You're gaining knowledge. You're trying new things out. So again, you're expanding yourself. You're moving past the fear of trying something new, and you're actually beginning to cultivate those skills. Now, as you move past just the learning zone, then you begin to move into that growth zone. And as I mentioned, that growth zone is that area where that limitless potential exists for each and every human being. And in this growth zone, there is discomfort. There's that area of unpredictability. You need to take some calculated risks. But this is where the breakthroughs happen. This is where you break through any of those glass ceilings that you have in your life. And this is where you start to see immense shifts happen in your world. So you have your comfort zone all the way up to that growth zone. And in that growth zone, there's going to be discomfort. Because again, that brain is going to be there trying to keep us in that comfort. And it's not a bad thing. That fear that exists inside of us has a very real purpose. It's not something to look bad upon, but we can change the meaning. We can begin to shift the meaning of what the fear means, what the challenge means, so we can begin to approach these things from a different angle, from a different perspective. Because everything in this universe that happens to us, that we experience, everything that is, has no inherent meaning. Life has no inherent meaning. Us as human beings are meaning-making machines. We put a meaning to every event that happens to us, everything we experience. We, whether consciously or subconsciously, put a meaning to these events. Based upon the meaning, we have an emotion. And then from that emotion, we respond and react accordingly inside of our life. So if the meaning to challenge for us is that it's hard, it's bad, it means that we need to retreat, it means that we need to turn the other way and move the other way, then that's how we're going to respond. That's the meaning that we have towards the challenge. But if we have a different meaning, if the meaning of challenge is that it's good, it means that we're heading in the right direction, it means it's a time to lean in instead of step back, then we're beginning to rewrite that meaning of what challenge is, and we're going to begin to respond differently to the challenges that come up. So the meaning that challenge is bad and we need to run away, we're going to take a step back. The meaning that challenge is saying that we're headed in the right direction and there's growth and opportunity on the other side of it, then we're going to be creating this process where we're continuing to lean in instead of step back from those situations. Because ultimately, there's always that reward on the other side. When we go through the challenge, when we go through the hardship, whether it's something physically, mentally, emotionally, there's always a reward, there's always a lesson, there's always a building of our resilience, of our character, of all the things that we're growing into. There's always something, there's always a benefit on the other end of that. So if we can maintain that understanding, that trust, and that perspective, then we can sometimes more easily move in and move through the things that are coming up in our life. And it's interesting because fear and excitement run off these same exact neural pathways inside of the brain. So the same areas of the brain get activated whether we have immense fear or immense excitement. And the only difference between the two is our perspective, the perspective that we have. And there's a saying that says, if you're feeling scared and excited, it means you're heading in the right direction. Because when we step into these areas we've never been, there's going to be an inherent fear there. And that's okay. Because courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is the will to act despite the fear being there. So when you see people at the highest levels, whether it's in your profession, whether it's in a sport, whatever it is, they're performing at those levels, they're doing those things, they're putting themselves out there. It doesn't mean that they don't have fear. Maybe they have varying degrees of it, especially how much time they've spent in a space. We have more competence, So then we develop more confidence. So the more we do something, the more confident we become in it. But there are still fears that exist. There are fears that are there for a purpose. And again, as I mentioned before, fear inherently is not a bad thing, and fear is not the enemy. Fear is a system that has been developed to keep us alive as a species. This is a system that was developed at the earliest ages of the human species. And in the beginnings, our fear was utilized to keep us alive, to keep us from being eaten by predators. If we weren't afraid of that sound in the bush that could have been a saber-toothed tiger, it had very serious repercussions for how we were able to sustain and live as a species. So this fear response has a very important duty. And even to this day, if you just had no fear whatsoever about anything, you would just walk into traffic with no thought of the repercussions. So fear is an important thing. It's when fear overrides and controls your decision-making processes and latches on to fears that sometimes aren't valid, because again, this system of fear that was developed in a time when we were hunter-gatherers now is trying to find its place where we have much different dangers that we encounter, right? Most people in modern society aren't worried about walking out their front door and getting mauled by a bear or eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. So there's different fears, there's different challenges that we're facing. And these challenges that we're facing in this time can still trigger this same very primal fear system that can serve to hold you back even when it would benefit you from moving forward. So again, it's not like we want to look at fear as a bad thing or anticipate or expect to just get rid of our fear and say, okay, I had this perspective shift. I know challenge is good, so I'm just not going to be fearful and I just get to move forward. No, it's something you're going to be working with and working through, and know that it's okay. It's all right. And it's a part of you trying to protect you. And the more that you can have that acceptance, because the more we resist something, the more that we push it away, the more it's going to appear in our life. What we resist persists. So if you resist the fear, if you push the fear, it's only going to come up stronger. But if you can acknowledge it, you can identify it, and then take action despite that. And then off those actions, you gain competence, you gain positive feedback, and then that feeds your confidence. And then you can begin to further subdue that fear. And then that's how you can literally work through your fears and begin to approach them and navigate them in a different way. Because it is through this resistance that you get your growth. And this is really what I see as one of the fundamental things for all life on earth. Utilizing resistance for growth. Think about it. When you go to the gym, you're literally breaking down your muscles so that they can build back up more strongly. Your immune system. The more that immune systems are exposed to different types of bacteria, the stronger the immune systems become. So it's this really fundamental process of utilizing resistance to build resilience. And again, this goes physically. I talked about the gym and distance running, and this also goes emotionally. When we feel these resistances, when we have these triggers, when all these things come up in life, it's an opportunity to build and grow. These things are not coming up in your life to break you down or to break you, or they're there to more so reveal you, reveal who you are, show you the strength and capacity you have, grow your strength and capacity. And growing up, I used to like to play video games. And when I thought about this concept, something came to mind in the way in which I view my life. Because in the video games I used to play, there were certain games that when it was getting harder, or there was more enemies and bad guys, and there was more resistance in the video game, I knew I was going the right way. So if I was going, around a map and there wasn't much going on, then all of a sudden the game got a lot harder. I knew I was heading in the right direction I needed to be going through in the game. And this is a silly little analogy, but it really, to me, exemplifies the way that I live my life and the way that I view this now. If there's more challenge coming up, if there's more resistance coming up, it means I'm really close to a breakthrough. And I've seen this time and time again in my life. The closer I got to the immense breakthroughs in my life, the more resistance I had, because the brain was trying to hold on to that known. It didn't know it was coming. It didn't know what I was evolving into. And it was like, hey, let's just stay here. But the more that I leaned in and leaned in and leaned in some more, boom, I had that breakthrough moment, and I broke through to the other side of that fear. I broke through to the other side of that challenge. And there was another version of me waiting, a deeper version, a more embodied version of me waiting on the other side of that. So again, this is the way that we can begin to approach this and a way to view this. Because if you're constantly running from the challenge, that may just be the invitation from the universe saying, this is where you're meant to go. We have lessons for you here. This is what you're meant to embody. We can see them as, tests from the universe sometimes. There's a saying that goes, with every new level comes a new devil. And while I don't completely resonate with the term devil, right? But the fact remains, there's a fundamental thing I agree with there. With every new level, there's going to be a new challenge. When you say, hey, universe, hey, God, whatever it is that you speak to, when you say, I'm ready for this, it's going to say, okay, great. Here's a challenge to give you a test of your resilience, of your morals, of your ethics, of the things that you say you want to do and the person that you want to be to reach that level. So like in school, we get the lessons and then the test. But in life, sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes we get the test and then we get the lessons. So we go through these tests in life, and then after these tests, we reflect back and be like, wow, look at these lessons. Look at these things that I needed to learn and understand before I could have reached that level that I was going to. So this is kind of a reversal of that schooling system of how this works and how we can get those tests. We can reflect on those lessons, and we can continue to evolve and grow into that version that you're becoming. And at this point, you may be asking, like, do I have to wait for challenge to come to grow? Like, is it something that I can do beforehand? And I think there is such an immense power in choosing challenge. It really creates a fundamental shift in the way that your brain works, in the way that you approach life, and in the way that you're able to navigate challenge. So I call this, or it's intentional challenge, right? It's going about life in a way that intentionally challenges you. Because listen, the fact is that if you aim to have an easy life, your life will be harder. But if you aim to make your life harder, then your life will be easier. This is a bit of a paradox, right? But if you're always seeking easy, if you're always seeking the easy route, then when you get the hard thing, inevitably, it becomes harder to navigate that challenge. But if you actively seek challenge in your life, then you're building a certain character. You're building a certain resilience every single time you step into that action. So the answer to that question is you can absolutely start this process early. You do not have to wait for challenge to present itself to be able to begin to refine and define how you want to show up in the world and build this unstoppable, unshakable resilience in your life. And I'll go over a couple of the things that were most impactful for me on my journey and some of the things that I aim to do on a consistent basis, at least, if not daily. Now, I'll start with the first one because I am such a proponent in using physical disciplines to build mental resilience. I enjoy running. So I used to really dislike running. I'll use the word hate. I hated running growing up. I was always a bit overweight and I never enjoyed running. When I was in the military, I got into running a bit more. I was overseas, needed something to do. I decided to sign up for a marathon, not knowing really what it entailed. And that was my first taste of really leaning into a physical discipline for that mental resilience. And training for a marathon takes such an emotional and mental and physical discipline because the race is 26.2 miles, yes, but it takes 12 to 16 weeks of training 5 days a week. It takes days where you're tired and sore, but you got to go do that 12-mile run, knowing that if you skip those runs, that run at the end is going to be a hell of a lot worse and you risk injury. So I became kind of obsessed with this process of needing to commit to this event that I was going to do. And since then, I've run another marathon. I did a half marathon last year. And whether it's marathons or even just going to the gym, you're committing to stepping into discomfort. Whether you're running, whether you're going to the gym, even if you enjoy it. I enjoy running now. I enjoy going to the gym. That doesn't mean it's not uncomfortable. Lifting heavy weights, pushing myself, getting my heart rate up, showing up on days where I necessarily don't want to show up. That's not always easy. So building that discipline build my character and continues to build my character. So I am such a proponent of leaning into physical action that is uncomfortable. And whatever is uncomfortable, you don't have to run marathons, you don't have to do half marathons. It doesn't even have to be running. If walking around the block for 30 minutes is something that pushes you and that is a step forward and is a challenge for you, then move to that. Never compare yourself to someone else of today. Only compare yourself to who you were yesterday. So start with where you're at. I'll get into this a little bit more at the end of the podcast. The next thing I want to talk about is cold water immersion. This is something a bit of a hot topic. If you've been following me on social media, you know it's something that I've really been big into in the past couple of years. And this is another thing. Every single time I go to step into that cold water, I know it's going to be an uncomfortable experience. I also know that there's immense health benefits. I know that afterwards I feel amazing. I feel great. I know that after the initial shock, when I get in control of my breathing, it's actually not terrible. But guess what? Every single time before I lean in, my brain is trying to think of every excuse. There's been times where all right, it's time to cold plunge. I found myself cleaning the house. I'm changing the cat litter. My brain's doing all these things to avoid the undeniable uncomfortability of getting into that chilly bath or into that chilly shower. And that's another practice that has been just so powerful for me to say, hey, listen, brain, I know that you don't want to do this. I know this is uncomfortable for you, but we're doing this anyway. I'm calling the shots here. And this is the muscle that I've been cultivating through these practices, and specifically in the cold water, especially when I did the 60-day challenge where I did it every day for 60 days and just 60 days of it every day. That brain was like, I don't want to do it today. And I'm like, but this is what we do now. And again, this is how intentional challenge can begin to fortify that. And then when unexpected challenge comes up, guess what? Your brain's like, okay, well, we're going to lean in. I get it now. You literally begin to rewire the way you're able to show up to your life, to the challenges that show up in your life. The last one I'll talk about, simple one, is waking up early. And when I say wake up early, I'm not even going to put a time on it. I know there's a lot of people that are huge proponents waking up at 6 a.m., 5 a.m., 3 a.m. And listen, I did the early wake up for a while, and there is such a power in being up very early, especially before, the rest of the world or the neighborhood or community or even the people in your house are, to have that space. But when I say wake up early, just waking up early enough to get the things you need to get done to start your day in a productive way. So having that morning routine. So if you wake up, if you're the kind of person that I was for most of my life, if work was at 9, I was up at 8:30 with a quick shower and a bite out the door with 7 seconds to spare before I punched in. I did that for a long time. Because what's more comfortable than your bed? You're laying in bed, it's comfortable, you want to hit the snooze, everything feels good, especially if it's cold out, right? You want to stay in those blankets. That's like the comfort zone, right? Laying in bed. So to knowingly and consciously say, I'm going to leave this bed early. I'm not going to hit snooze. I'm going to get out of bed. I'm going to do the things that are going to prepare me for the day mentally, physically, and emotionally. That's, again, fighting the brain, not fighting it. That's overriding that natural tendency of wanting to stay in that comfort. And these are 3 of the biggest tools that has shifted everything for me. And I haven't been 100% consistent with all of them. I've ebbed and I've flowed, but I definitely understand. And I can tell you in the quantitative data and qualitative data that I've amassed through tracking and journaling and structuring the ways in which I reflect upon how I feel and the motivation levels I have, there has been a profound shift over the past few years as I leaned more deeply into this intentional challenge and the intentional ways that I do things. And you can do the same thing too. Again, it's going to be uncomfortable, and that's okay. And you can take that as a sign. You have the opportunity right now to say, I'm going to change this meaning. I'm going to lean in. I'm going to approach challenge and understand that it has my benefit. And that's what I love about the cold exposure, right? I know it has all these positive effects. Dopamine levels, serotonin, mood, motivation. I know it has the positive effects, but I have resistance to it. So this goes for all the other challenges in your life. Like you can have faith on the other side of that is going to exist a growth for you, a massive growth potential for you. So even though there's resistance, you can lean in and lean through that. And there's such a power in that, and it's going to create such a massive shift in your life. And I promise you, it's going to lead you to performing and levels and understandings that not many people attain. This is definitely going to be a podcast on its own, but something I've been learning more and more lately is the path to your dreams, the path to your passions, the path to this level of the success that you're reaching towards is going to leave you in an area that you're misunderstood by many. There's so many people where I tell about the cold plunges, I tell about the marathons, I tell about all the various things that I'm doing to build myself to this vision that I feel in my core that I just have to actualize, this purpose in my heart that I know, this dream that's so massive, is going to leave you misunderstood by many. Because listen, to get to that top percent, to get into that 1%, you are going to be doing things that most people aren't willing to do. So if you're willing, if you are what you're capable, but if you're willing to step into that, if you're willing to do what most are not, you're going to achieve things that most will not. And you're going to be able to make impact. You're going to be able to make income, and you're going to be able to craft your life in a way that only few people are able to. And again, the people that are living inside of a different framework are not going to understand this. They're not even going to be able to compute or comprehend the things that you're doing. There's many people that think I'm absolutely crazy for a lot of the things I do. And there's been times where I'm like, am I crazy? I'm tracking all my time, I'm going into these cold baths, I'm doing all this stuff. But the data, like I said, the quantitative data, the reflection, the impact it's having on my life is undeniable. I cannot deny the growth and who I'm becoming along this process. So prepare to be understood. As a matter of fact, if you feel misunderstood by many, it's a sign that you're moving in the right direction. So keep on moving. It's part of this process. And I promise you, it is all worth it. And I really just want to leave you today with reminding you, it's about small steps. As I mentioned before, never compare yourself to someone else of today. Only ever compare yourself to who you were yesterday. This is something I still deal with, and I still have challenges with, and I still have to remind myself. So this is a reminder to me as well, because I spend a lot of time reading, listening to podcasts, watching YouTube videos of some of the highest performing people in the world. And I look at the levels of which the discipline and the crafting of their life, and I'm like, wow, what am I doing? I could be doing so much more. But then I sit back and look at where I was last month, last year, 5 years ago. It's almost indistinguishable, right? So yes, there's where I want to be. There's this level that I'm heading towards of discipline. And ultimately, the discipline is just to lead me into a version of me that this is who I become, right? So the discipline is the driver to get us started into these new habits that are uncomfortable. But eventually, they become our tool of liberation. Eventually, we don't need that discipline because it just becomes who we are. I eat this way because it fuels me. It makes me feel good. And if I were to eat another way, it would severely impact my ability to show up, my physical, my mental, all these different things just become a part of who you are. And a discipline is the driver for that. So again, take small steps. I've done this time and time again where I was like, okay, I need to wake up at 5 a.m. I need to meditate for an hour. I need to go in the cold shower. I need to journal. I need to read. And I stacked all this stuff on. And guess what happened? I lasted a week, 2 weeks, maybe sometimes I even lasted a few months. And then I would completely revert back into my old patterns and old ways of being. It was like, this isn't who you are. We're going all the way back. So then I began to realize I need to take this in incremental shifts. So I started to maybe wake up earlier. Then that was my pattern. Then that became a way of being. That was just second nature. Then boom, it was waking up and meditating for whatever period of time. Then that was second nature. Then it was wake up, meditate, and gym. You can see the pattern here. So whatever this looks like for you, continue to build that step by step, slowly and methodically. Because again, you're not going to need discipline the whole time. You need discipline in the beginning to break pattern loops, to create new patterns, to create new neural pathways. But eventually, once that begins to feel good and you identify with this is who you are now and this is how you show up, then that's just your way of being. And your personality becomes your personal reality. And then you can continue to build upon that. And this is, again, the process that I'm in. I'm not where I envision myself being, but I am so much farther than where I was last week, last month, and last year. And as long as you continue to make that incremental process, as long as you continue to reflect upon the impact that it's having on your life, you're going to keep making those leaps and bounds. So again, the challenge is the way. Many times the challenge you're avoiding is the exact path that the universe is opening up for you. This mindset shift has been just absolutely immense in my life. And through utilizing intentional challenge, through changing my perspective on what challenge means to me, it's completely shifted how I show up in my life and how I'm able to navigate the things that come up. I don't get rocked off center as easily when challenge gets thrown at me. I'll leave you with one last mindset shift here. Instead of saying, why is this happening to me, which is in the victim mentality, ask, how is this happening for me? What is this trying to show me? What is the lesson here? Because when you say, why is this happening to me? Then we're saying, what's the purpose? This is happening to me and there's no reason here and we're resisting it. But when we can take a step back and say, well, how is this happening for me? We can begin to answer those questions. The answers come. The universe, God, it will speak through you and show you. It takes a day, week, maybe even a couple months, but I promise you, every event, your worst day can become your best day when you can alchemize that, when you can integrate those lessons, those understandings, move through them, and they become your power. I can promise you that. So I will leave you with that. I invite you to bring in some intentional challenge into your life, to begin to reorient your relationship to challenge and begin to enter that growth zone and begin to actualize your limitless potential. This is another topic I really love. And again, it's absolutely made a profound impact on my life. So again, till the next episode, thank you for listening and stay growing.